as a leader, like you said, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Nobody works in a silo. Nobody's a lone ranger. And the ones that do tell you I did it on my own are the ones that most, this is terrible English, but have least done it on their own, or have, have done it more with other people's contributions, whether they're willing to acknowledge it or even have the awareness of it. So when we're collaborating, let's just say, in the events industry, it's crucial, right?
Yeah.
It's a high pressure environment. You've got to deliver. It's there, when the events go live, it's very fluid, but all the preparation up, budgets change, things happen, whether it's weather or staff changes. How can people quickly build trust with different stakeholders when the pressure is on and they're dealing with tough situations on the spot?
Yes. Well, it has to do, one of the most powerful things we can do is mind our listening, because the way in which we show up in communication is going to influence our neurochemistry. And we're either and so think of it this way, Seth, when we're in conversation, in our interaction dynamics and our micro moments here, we're both serving up neurochemical cocktails as a result of the ways in which we're speaking and listening. And those neurochemical cocktails are either going to equate to trust, because trust is a neurochemical state, oxytocin, prefrontal cortex online. Or it's going to serve up cortisol, because that's the stress, distrust hormone. And it's going to start to close down my brain. And so what's happening here is as we speak and listen with one another, we're serving up either all oxytocin or all cortisol or both. Now that's just a state of uncertainty. Okay. Now, wouldn't you agree that to do our best work, we want to be in a state of trust? We want that oxytocin. We want to be serving up neurochemical cocktails of oxytocin, not cortisol. And so what's really helpful to know is that we create states of distrust and closed-mindedness and protect that sort of self-I-centric protect mentality when we are entirely transactional. When if you and I are in a transactional conversation, it's all about getting it done, And I'm listening to confirm and I'm listening to protect. And it's about, I'm telling you what to do and I'm asking if you did it. Like, just to know that the nature of a transactional conversation, that's how we get things done. And when we're stressed, we tend to do that thinking that's going to solve everything. But interestingly, studies have shown that when we're transactional, we create cortisol and we tend to create distrust. And so there's a cost with that kind of conversation. Now, of course, we are going to lean in a transactional direction because we got to get stuff done, especially when we're stressed out. But again, it comes at a cost. So when we know this, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to shift my listening. And one of the most powerful ways to create more trust instantly so you can get more done is you, instead of listening to confirm, right? Or listen to defend, that's being positional. We want to listen to connect with one another. We want to listen to discover. We want to listen to experiment, and we want to listen to co-create. And I know this sounds simple, but just the decision to change your listening in a moment. So let's say you and I are really stressed out, and let's say we're working on this event, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of tension and I'm being really transactional. And I remember, oh boy, if I shift my listening right now, something might be unlocked. And if I recognize this and I go, okay, just going to listen to connect with Seth right now. I'm going to listen to experiment. I'm going to listen to co-create with him. Just that decision that I makes these micro changes in my facial expressions and body posture. Your brain picks up on that immediately and goes, oh. And as I listen to connect with you, what I think is now different, what I say is now different, how it sounds is different, and unlocks an opening within you. And all of a sudden, we spike oxytocin, we open our prefrontal cortex, and so much more happens. But what does it take? It takes having to be conversationally agile, remembering to listen slightly different, Yeah. And that's one way to go about it.
It's really great because, I talk about my kids a lot in this podcast. We're talking about listening, and I think of it as a vessel, and it's not an empty vessel. And we fill it up before the communication even gets to us. So I dare I say, you're saying some form of that, and being inquisitive. I've also talked about the bridge. Go over to the other side of the bridge. Don't stay on your side of the bridge, because when you're talking about this science behind communication and collaboration, the connection, transaction of it all creates cortisol because it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it becomes the lowest common denominator. It just becomes a commoditized transaction and you
Yeah.
feel icky,
Yes.
kind of like you need a shower to jump in the lake, it's like
Yeah.
kind of gross,
Yeah.
because that could be done through an app, like click something, submit or send or buy or update or
Right.
renew, and I think the richness and, is that what inspires you about your work so much? Is that there's this richness of human connection, which is, dare I say, the source of so much storytelling and creativity and community?
Mhm. Mhm. It's oh my gosh, there's so much to say about this. I don't know. I'm like, double Dutch. You've got that double Dutch. I'm like, oh, I want
Yeah,
to jump in. You had that go. I'm like, gosh, there's so much to say. It's it's funny that the whole thing about being transactional. It does feel icky, but the cost that I find is, yeah, it doesn't feel great, but we become suboptimal in that moment. It squeezes out our creative capacity, right? That cortisol, it dampens, it mutes our prefrontal cortex. That's the job of cortisol, which is kind of wild to me when you think about it, right? Cortisol shuts down the most brilliant part of our brain. And so we don't have the ability to come up with really good ideas. We don't have the ability to take disparate ideas, bring it together and innovate, right? And so not only does it feel icky, it flies in the face of what I ultimately want in life, which is
yeah,
what? I wanna create a positive impact. I wanna do well in the world. I wanna succeed. I wanna thrive. But these habits that many of us sustain in how we communicate and collaborate with one another inadvertently is absolutely working against us.
yeah,
And when we don't know this, we kinda walk around victims of our own habits. The moment you wake up to this, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the driver's seat. I can do something about this." It's pretty powerful.